Hey, Damon, Nicole, Nikki, man, happy Monday, everybody. Damon,
Happy
how are
Monday.
you? Damon, how are you, man?
I'm great. Nice to see you again.
Damon, do you how was last week? Did you do anything special last week? Like, what was going on there?
Yeah, I did a couple things last week, Kurt.
Yeah, what was that?
It was a whirlwind tour of Alaska, wasn't it, my friend?
Oh my God. You know what I am so honored. Like, I'm literally starstruck to have our guest on today, but I do have, like, it's a little bittersweet because we're not in person. So we did 3 live streams last week in person all over Alaska. It was awesome. We were geeking out with Alaska manufacturers. We've got Nicole Donnelly here filling in as guest host. Nicole, happy Monday. How are you today?
Happy Monday. I gotta know, is Damon as tall in real life as he looks on screen?
He is. Damon, who's tall? Are you taller than me or are we same? I don't know. It was like
I think you're taller than I am.
Sometimes I look at Damon and we were like eye to eye, and sometimes I thought he was taller than me. I don't know, maybe like it's the hair. The hair, he looks a lot taller than me because of the hair. So all right. He is one big dude. We were roomies for a week. It was a blessing, it was a gift, and we got to hang out with the Alaska MEP, just geeking out with manufacturers. And so, speaking of, let's slide right into our guest. Man, this is a powerhouse today. So, Nikki, I wish I knew how to pronounce your maiden name, Gonzales. How are you? Happy Monday.
I'm good, thanks. You want to start off your Monday with the mouthful? Hulda Margrét Hallgrímsdóttir Gonzales is the full thing. I go by Nikki for short.
Can one more time?
Hulda Margrét Hallgrímsdóttir Gonzales.
And what did you say? What's the American version of your maiden name?
Hallgrím's daughter.
Hallgrím's daughter. So, all right. Should we just call you Hallgrím's daughter for the rest of the program? I'm going to stick with Nikki, right?
I was actually spelling it over the phone on Friday with someone, and first I say it, and then I spell it, and she got so confused, and then she was like, "Wait a minute, I thought you were trying to tell me that you were somebody's granddaughter." And I was like, no, I'm trying to spell it for you. It is pronounced like daughter. It means daughter, but it's spelled Dottir, that last portion of it. Some people know this if they watch like CrossFit. We have a lot of women from Iceland that are really good CrossFit athletes. And almost every woman from Iceland, their last name ends in daughter. So they became collectively known as the daughters. I don't use it as much anymore now that I'm married to an American and kind of added the Gonzales. Not to take up all the air in the room with this story, but I used to be asked at like cash registers when, you know how you have the loyalty card and they have to say by name, like they're supposed to say, "Oh, thank you, miss," or Mrs. whatever. They would look at the receipt and go, "Oh, I bet you can't wait until you get married." And it would piss me off a lot because I was not going to change my name when I got married. But never say never, right?
Never say
things
never.
change.
Yeah, never say never.
Well, you know what, Nikki? I knew you and I would have a lot of chemistry here because Anders' son, when you're Swedish, like everybody's named like son, and so you got the Iceland daughter thing going. So we'll geek out about that. But hey, we've got some fun comments here. Karen is here. She's a fellow Texan. So happy Monday. Speaking of Texan,
howdy, Karen.
How about this wonderful Texan right here? Whitney Houston's in the house. We've got our dear buddy Greg Mishu is here.
Hi, Greg.
Today.
Hey, Greg.
How are you
I haven't
guys?
talked to him in a while.
All right, let's dig in. So, Nikki, we have a little fun first question of the program, Damon. I'm just going right there. Are you ready?
Yes, Dave, do it.
All right, I'm not very original. We're just going to go there, Nikki. So, Nikki, if I understand this correctly, you're like 11, 12, moved to England, and then from there you became a Texan. Who doesn't do that, right? Who doesn't start in Iceland, go to England, and become a Texan? That's just common math right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you were a little girl growing up, let's say Iceland pre-11, when you were a little girl growing up, who was your hero? Who was your hero's little girl growing up?
My dad.
Oh, man. That's mine and Dame. Mine and we're big girl dads. Nicole's a girl mom. We love that answer. Can you share why? Let's hear it.
Well, my mom was a stay-at-home mom growing up. And now as an adult, I view that a lot differently. But I used to think like, oh, my mom is just home here, complaining or telling me what to do or whatever, right? It's like she does all the job and then my dad comes home and is the hero after he's been at work all day. But it was fascinating to me that what my dad was doing. I got to go to his office a couple of times and see. So he was an electrical engineer. He was building control systems for jigging reels in the fishing industry and doing some other, cool stuff. And I just always thought, like, how cool would it be to learn what my dad does? And, he used to do all kinds of other things too. He would like build computers. When he was younger, he had a bunch of businesses. So I just always gravitated towards that. And I saw my dad he had a college degree, right? And my mom kind of stopped in her tracks when she had me. And poor thing, now I'm like, oh, I'm the reason you're not my hero, Mom. As an adult, though, I definitely, it has changed. My mom is my hero in a lot of ways now. But growing up, it was, I kind of saw that, my dad was like somehow doing stuff that I wanted to learn and get to know how to do. And he got to travel. He went on business trips overseas and would bring me things back, from Asia or from Europe or different things like that. And so I always wanted to do that when I grew up.
That is awesome. So what's mom and dad's name, please?
My dad's name is Hallgrímur, as in Hallgrím's daughter or Hallgrímsdóttir. He goes by Hal here, as he is a Texan now. And my mom's name is Fjóla, which is the Icelandic word for violet.
Nice.
But it's spelled Fjola. Yep. The J is like a Y sound in our language. So I think it's a beautiful name. She always gets shortchanged as well at Starbucks with the Fajola or Fiona or whatever. Right. We haven't been the luckiest with the names translating very well. Yeah. And she lives back in Iceland now, but she's actually coming to visit me. I haven't seen her in 3 years since COVID.
Wow.
She's coming this Thursday to stay with me for 2 weeks, and I'm so excited.
Oh yes,
well, congratulations! Nice. Greg Miss You drops this comment.
Absolutely, Greg.
Hardest jobs, at least with the amount of glory. Amen, brother. Nicole, what did you have?
Yeah, Nikki, I'm just so curious. You mentioned that your mom kind of became your hero. What changed? When did that change for you? Like, when did you kind of realize all that she did? And
I think it started after I got my first job, and my parents separated, and I started to talk more about, like, I all of a sudden, or finally, I guess, was old enough to have real conversations with my mom about, the adult things that happened during my childhood and some of the reasons behind some things that I experienced and things that we did. And just, when you're a child, there's a lot of nuance to life that your parents don't explain to you for good reasons, right? And then when I moved out to California for my first job, my mom came to visit me at some point, and we had a weekend, like a girls' weekend, and, we're both adults now. So we went out to the bar and we went out to restaurant, and we just started, I started to learn more about my mom as a person. And that's when I think started to really look up to her as a hero, because I had no clue about all the things that she went through, all the sacrifices that she made, all the, how difficult it was to make these moves and support my dad's career and take care of us and, coming to a new country and all these different things. And then secondly, what really I think bumped it up is when I became a mom. And I ended up leaving a startup job. I thought I was going to go straight back to work and my husband was going to stay at home. But I was working a really, really, really demanding job, and my daughter was born premature, and I was supposed to go back to work before she was even supposed to be born. So that plan didn't work out for me. And so I actually stayed at home, while also, running a business or two. And, I wasn't just straight up stay-at-home mom, but I did stay home with my daughter and then my son, 2 kids, up until he was 1 and she was 3. And that gave me a whole nother perspective, and a reason to respect the hell out of my mom and everything she did for us.
So much sacrifice, for sure. Yeah, that's amazing.
Well, that's perfect. Hey, a couple more shout outs here again, guys. I want to give an intro. So, hey, good morning, happy Monday, happy afternoon, whatever time zone you're in. Gabriel, happy Monday to you. Whitney says, Greg, miss you, preach. So, guys, if you just joined us, we are here with Nikki Gonzales, head of partnerships at Quotebeam. We're going to take a deep dive into Quotebeam. And Nikki, you are a highly, highly sought after speaker, panelist, keynote. And again, we are just so honored and thrilled to have you here today. We've got so much to uncover about automation, robotics, AI. Nicole, you're just chomping at the bit to talk about AI with Nikki here today. But before we go there, Nikki, I'd love to hear, you, all right, so Iceland, England, Houston, you bring your talent, your passion, your expertise to the world of manufacturing. Curious minds want to know why. What attracted you to the world of manufacturing?
Good question. I didn't really know it existed. I mean, I knew, but most of us don't grow up looking at manufacturing engineering in one of the books of what do you want to be when you grow up? So I mentioned my dad's an electrical engineer, and he ended up getting recruited into a marketing job, and then he started his own company. And I started working for him when I was in middle school at his small business. And I started with technical marketing, technical writing. I wrote some user manuals. I helped make some data sheets for some hardware and different things like that. And I got lucky because I got to work for him every summer and every, spring break if I wanted to earn some extra money. And I got to see and, touch a lot of different jobs that happen in a small business, from accounting to answering the phone to these different things. And turns out speaking and writing is easier for me than, for instance, doing math and stuff. So I ended up taking AP Physics and things like that. But my dad really helped me through all of that. And I saw my dad more at that point as a business owner than an engineer. And I remember, him being my hero, all these different travels and things. So I was like, oh, I want to do international business. But that's a really broad thing, right? I've never really known what I wanted to do exactly. And it was kind of by chance that I ended up doing some sales in my last internship with my dad's company. It's very technical. It was a mobile resource management platform for basically IoT for fleets of trucks. Tracking trucks, communicating with them, automating, reporting and different things like that. And I happened to pick up the phone one time, a prospect called, and they let me run with it. They were like, just run with it and ask for help when you need help. And I ended up doing a remote demo from a hotel room in Dallas while we were going to my first trade show, the American Trucking Trade Show in Dallas. And this customer was in Walla Walla, Washington or somewhere. And they ended up buying the system. And they were extremely happy with, I guess, the whole sales process. I obviously didn't know how to sell anything. I was trying to just answer their questions, make sure that, we picked the right system, that we solved their problem. And that's where I was like, wait, this is a thing? That was sales? That was cool. That's not what I thought sales would be like at all. And that's where I discovered that, hey, that's called technical sales. You're more kind of like a consultant than a salesperson, right? I couldn't have sold that thing if it didn't solve their problem. And I did get an international business degree, but international business doesn't really prepare you for any kind of particular starting job. So I decided to go when it was time to try to get a job, right? Go into the campus recruiting portal and pick any kind of technical job that didn't require an engineering degree. So I applied for technical marketing with Caterpillar, technical recruiting with some companies, and then technical sales. And I ended up at Keynote University. If you guys are at all familiar with the world of industrial automation, they're a Japanese company, and they hire a lot right out of college, and they train the heck out of people. And they don't care what kind of college degree you have, as long as you're, interested enough and capable of learning the technology that they sell. And they train very heavily on application engineering. And so I think, it was sort of by luck that I managed to find somebody that was willing to hire a person with my type of degree and train me into a technical role. But really, the first time that I really saw the inside of a factory was after I started my first job.
Wow. Okay.
And I just got addicted to it immediately. Going in and looking at the line and looking at stuff being made and getting to observe anything from one of my first sales calls I went on as a joint call was a ketchup packet factory, portion pack. They were making Heinz, just different little packets for fast foods, and got to see all kinds of things being made. And I've sort of, gone in and out of that industry since then, but I always get pulled back. There's something about that machinery, making stuff that we use every day, that really gets me.
It's always incredible when you see those things, how fast it's made.
Yeah.
It's the speed. I remember the first time I saw a visual inspection system on spark plugs, and you can't see them. It's just like a blur, right? And these things are working, and the stuff that, the automation is incredible.
Well, so machine vision was my application expertise area. And I got to play with the samples in the lab and set up the cameras and figure out
what are the
and odds? That's one of the things that going from kind of consumer mindset to industrial mindset. One of the things at the time was why the heck is a camera $5,000 that only has, 1 megapixel or maybe half, and it doesn't even have any color? And you're like, oh, because I have to process this in tenths of a second.
Yeah.
And pull out all this relevant information, but it can't have too much because otherwise it's going to take too long to process. Yeah, it was a very, very fun place to be. I loved the machine vision, the problem solving involved with that.
Well, that's awesome. We've got some. Hey, and speaking of, your buddy is here. He's talking about how he just bumped into you recently at Automate. So how's that, Dave Chrysler? Happy Monday,
Hi,
Dave.
Dave.
Friend.
Yeah, hey Dave. I wish we could have spent more time together. Wow, Automate was such a blur for me. It was crazy.
Right. And hey, and Gabriel dropped a great comment. Let's change that. More automation books for kids. And Damon, how about this? Adam, good morning to Alaska. We met Adam in person last week. He is a high-level web designer. He is a guru for entrepreneurs, so great guy to connect with. Adam, I'm looking forward to chatting further with you. So, Nikki, let's keep this rolling. So you're at Quotebeam, and I'd like to get underneath the hood at Quotebeam. We're talking a little bit before we went on live here. Your CEO, founder, the gentleman that this dream has come to life at Quotebeam, Roman, was working at Apple, and I caught him a little bit on a podcast with our mutual friend Chris Lukey, and he was talking about, like, man, dude, you left Apple. Like, how many people leave Apple to start a dream? And he gave a great testimony about, you know what, I didn't want to leave a life of regret, and I want to take a shot. So can you share a little bit about Quotebeam and Roman and how you got attracted to this company? What's going on there?
Sure. So Roman and I actually we worked together at Festo back in the day. So that was my second job after Keynote. And I was a sales engineer in the Bay Area, selling pneumatics and electromechanical motion systems. And Roman was head of the customer solutions department of the Festo West Coast at the time, which is really kind of an internal systems integrator. They build a lot of sub-assemblies for other OEMs. They have a panel shop there, do a lot of assemblies for process automation valves and, building electrical panels. And Roman's engineering background is electrical engineering, similar to my dad, but he started in machine building. He worked for a machine builder before coming to Festo. So again, a lot of designing, speccing panels and custom machines and custom systems. And he had this frustration throughout his entire career that he thought he would be doing engineering. And then he spent a lot of his time doing administrative stuff and building, Excel sheets, bill of materials, and then getting quotes and finding pricing and availability and lead time. And especially when you work at a big company like Festo, when they were speccing out and building and even quoting custom systems, is they need to have a hard cost associated with all the components that they quote. They don't just, kind of ballpark it and hope that something sticks and that they end up making a profit, which is apparently what a lot of small machine builders do. And I didn't know this. So myself, I involved him in a couple of projects with my customers. And I was always like, Roman, what's taking so long? Why don't we have a bid out? Like, this other guy gave a bid in like a week. And it's like, this other guy out of his garage that just ballparked, his component cost and says, I can probably deliver it in 8 weeks, right? They're going, okay, well, we need to get exact pricing and dates for all these things so that we can build a proper proposal and bill materials and all these things. And so we worked on a couple projects together like that. And then I ended up, out of some frustration at the time with like lead times and things like that, I ended up getting recruited into a software sales job. And I thought to myself, and it was in the engineering space, but in design engineering, virtual prototyping for electronics. And Apple was my largest account at that time when I went over to sell this electromagnetic simulation software. But it was like, great, I can sell something and then it's already made. They just have to download it or get a CD, right? I was doing a lot of things to be proactive to try to help my customers with delivery issues, lead time issues, things like that. And this was back in 2012. So we haven't even scratched the surface of like the last few years. But that's where Roman and I met. And Festo is one of those cool companies that helps their employees with continuing education. And they had a program tied to Stanford. And Roman actually ended up getting his MBA at Stanford, or going to Stanford for that at the time. And then he ended up getting poached by Apple from Festo and kind of continued that. And then I ended up going to work for a software startup called Algomus at the time. They're called Algo now, but they're predictive supply chain analytics. And that was kind of at the time where natural language processing was sort of in its infancy with working with data. We built an engine where you can communicate with your database using English language rather than SQL, things like that, so that business users could do their own queries in English. You could pull up dashboards, ask questions of your data in a chat interface. That was all a lot harder to do back then than it is now. But we worked with enterprise companies to help them segment their data and get smarter on how to allocate stock to different locations. So we worked mainly with retail companies, movie studios, predicting demand for movies, particularly movies that have brand new releases, to go, how will this new release, sell in different Walmarts, Best Buys, Targets across the country, to help them not just ship 100 DVDs to every store, and upon release, a bunch of them would sell out immediately, and then a bunch of them would just have that stock sitting around, and then it would get returned eventually when that promo period was over. But to bucket the stores and look at, okay, how did it do in the box office? How did movie theaters sell around that area? What are the demographics of people that actually shop at the store? Is it, a lot of young people with kids that live there, and is it a family movie, or is it, a rom-com and you've got it in a retirement community, right? All these different things affect, sales, and we want to predict demand as much as we can so that we can stock appropriately. And we were building a lot of AI, and I will say AI, right? But it's a complicated term, mostly standard type of machine learning, right? But taking in a lot of third-party data in addition to POS data, making some predictions, looking at, potential social media like Twitter sentiment for a particular movie. How do we relate? Okay, this particular actor was in this movie and it did really well in this market before. And now we have another movie with that same actor. It'll probably, do pretty well. And we had an association at that startup with some really smart people at MIT that built some models. And I ended up presenting some of those papers at conferences and things. And Roman was at Apple at that time and had gone to Stanford. That's where he met our CTO, Andrew Core, who was getting his computer science degree at Stanford at the time. And they started Quotebeam kind of as a class project, I guess. Roman drawing on his frustration of his career of like, oh man, it's just so frustrating to communicate with all these different regional distributors, emailing and phone calling back and forth to get these PDF quotes and get lead times and pricing. There's got to be a better way for that. So they got together and built sort of the first iteration of Quotebeam. During that time, we got together and had lunch. He was like, oh, you're working on AI and supply chain stuff. I have this idea for the startup. He's like, we're not taking it full time or anything yet, but if we ever do, would love to get your thoughts on it. Maybe we can work together. And that just progressed over time. So like he ended up staying at Apple for 5 years because it is a big deal to leave a career like that and, start your own business. It's a big risk. But it never left his mind. Right. And I ended up, like I said, in 2018, had my daughter. I was actually at an artificial intelligence conference when my water broke.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's the whole story.
Nikki, I was like, couldn't AI just have the baby for you? Like, couldn't?
Yeah.
Is there something with AI? I don't know. I'm just asking. I don't know.
We ended up it was one of those things that it must be meant to be, because Roman saw me speak at a conference. We both got invited by the same group of VCs to an AI conference in Half Moon Bay, which is not a place I would expect to run into Roman. But we ran into each other. It turned out this was like maybe 3 months after my daughter was born, 3-4 months. And we were like, hey, what's going on? Good to see you here. And I was like, oh yeah, I had a baby. He's like, me too. January 20. I was like, how did you know when my baby was born? And he's like, no, that's when my baby was born.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was there at the, I guess, invitation of some of his professors from MIT and this, not MIT, Stanford, and this VC group called StartX. And they were trying to encourage him to, quit his job and raise money for the startup and stuff. And he was like, I ran into you today for a reason. You need to be involved in this. And I was just like, whoa, I just left my other startup job. Like, I can't do this right now. I would love to, but not right now. So we stayed in touch, and he flew up to Seattle maybe a year later. We had a brainstorming session, and he showed me, like, they had just been working on Quotebeam kind of on nights and weekends. At that point, Andrew was working at Box, I think, or Venmo. And so I stayed involved and interested, but like timing was never right. And then they finally took it full time a couple of years ago. And guess what? Turns out timing was good for me. My son was like maybe 8 months, and I was like, well, when my son turns 1, and I'm pretty much ready to get back to it, And I was like, but I'm not necessarily moving back to the Bay Area. And they were like, we don't care. It's remote work, right? Be wherever you want. So I ended up moving back to Texas for family reasons. But it was like I couldn't say no. This had been in the wings for so long. And I had from the very get-go thought, like, our industry needs this. This is a great idea. And so stars aligned. And I was the first employee to join Quotebeam before we, you know, raised the seed round or anything. And we kind of, you know, not to take too much credit, but I helped them kind of build the product, and then, you know, found a market, some interest, some investors, and we raised the seed round last year while we were at Automate, pretty much. And it's been a really wild ride since then, and it's awesome. We have a team of 8 at this point, and just growing really fast, mostly based off of word of mouth and other, you know, customer referrals and things like that. So we still have a whole lot to go when we actually try to scale up with marketing and things. But that's kind of, yeah, the backstory of Quotebeam. It probably could have been shorter, but it could have also been a lot longer.
I love every bit of it, and what's awesome is a couple COVID babies in there, right? Not only did you have a COVID, a baby during COVID, but I believe Quotebeam could be considered a little COVID baby, if you will.
Yep.
Being born, I think 2021. So, all right, this is fantastic, guys. Again, if you're just joining us, Nikki Gonzales, podcaster, keynote speaker, she's just a little bit of everywhere. Man, you have been on fire at different keynotes this year, panelists. Like, I know, like, if you look at like your list of speaking gigs, there's a little gap during that little thing called COVID, right? But it looks like you're like the world's back open. You're on fire. What are some of the trends? Like, you know, and I know, Nicole, you want to go there for sure with AI. I don't know. Was anybody talking about AI at any of these places you're talking about? What was like some of the buzz at some of the conferences that you're speaking at? What are you hearing about AI? Let's go there. Why don't you play a little reporter for us, if you will?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were asking Nicole.
No.
So, yeah, I don't really speak at AI conferences anymore, and I haven't been to any since about 2018. So it's been very interesting to kind of observe that from the sidelines now. Like, I didn't really know about LLMs at the time. Right. We were looking at natural language processing, all kinds of different models for that. But large language models weren't really being discussed at AI conferences in 2018, at least not commercially. Right. And I was reading a lot of the papers coming out of Google and places like that at the time, because Algo was doing what we call applied machine learning. And we were looking at which models coming out of research can we actually commercialize and do something with. Because we were developing a product for a vertical and a technology stack for that, not just being a pure like AI research company, right? But we wanted to be as close to research as possible so that we know which models can give us a competitive edge, what things can we apply to our type of application. So I do remember like chatbots were a big subject when I was presenting at conferences, and I talked a bit about chatbots for different types of business applications, right? And that's been an interesting development right now with the recent, explosion in generative AI. But honestly, like that meant, in 2018, I guess that was like 5 years ago. Those were not the dominant models of the time. And there wasn't really a whole lot of discussion of language models or these generative models, right? And I have this gap, so I can't say that I'm any kind of expert in how that developed or why it developed that way. Now I kind of sit on the sidelines of it a little bit. Now we're looking at, okay, how do we use this at Quotebeam? Because we've always thought, okay, there will be an AI element to what we do, for the sake of also like as a marketplace / platform that aggregates some things, right? Oftentimes you can do a lot more when you have, more sources or more participants as a group, whether it's an association or a platform or a marketplace, right? Than any single company can do with their own data. Talking about AI now, I don't know. I kind of had enough of it, to be honest, for a while, because it was like, oh, every company is AI, and it was just such a buzzword. Yeah. And honestly, when I got into it, I also was like, ooh, the AI can do X. And then you get down into the nitty gritty, and like as the person kind of behind what the marketing team is telling you, your BS detector gets real strong really fast.
Yeah.
Let's say that. And so my eyes start glazing over when people say, oh, AI does this, or we use AI for that. I'm like, well, yeah, do you really though? Or like really, like machine learning is AI, right? Or is it? Depends. Are you talking about, AGI, or are you talking about like application specific things where yes, the models keep learning, right? They keep getting retrained. They keep making some decisions. Are we talking about robotics? or just software. People that are out of, not in these spaces, it's like, why the heck do we call robotic process automation, like basically automating software tasks? Coming from the hardware world, I'm like, why would you co-opt that name? Like, that makes no sense to me. There's no robots here. So I don't know. I haven't been to, like I said, an AI conference in 5 years, and I don't know what they're talking about there now. I go to more like industry specific. We're talking about smart manufacturing and all of those things. But honestly, my experience with manufacturers, they're like, yeah, no, I got business to attend to. You can talk about this AI stuff somewhere else. Like,
yeah.
I've already been on my like year 12 of my 10-year ERP implementation, and that's been rough enough. Like, don't bring up AI to me or some other like lights out manufacturing or digitalization. If I hear that one more time, I want to.
Awesome.
I tend to, at least now, I really want to focus on like the practical stuff.
Yeah.
What people on the ground that are actually doing things in the plants want to talk about. I have a lot more fun, like just kind of talking like realistic steps, small steps. And it turns out most people, if you talk about like a maturity curve, they're closer to the bottom. Most people that I talk to, right? Because I'm not at these like enterprise, huge, big manufacturers, in their C-suite, what they're talking about for the next 10 years. I'm not in those conversations right now. I'm with the people that are like tearing their hair out because they're trying to do their day job and the production stopped or the parts are not there or, the supply chain people. That's who I'm talking to a lot. And yes, in the long run, all kinds of tools and connections and digitalization and things will help them. But in the short run, they just need to get their damn parts.
Was there a challenge with supply chain during COVID? But like, I heard that rumor. Nicole, did you have any rumors about supply chain being challenging during COVID? Any, just maybe one or two?
Maybe a little, maybe just a smidge.
So all right, let's get into quote. I'm going to dig in deeper into. I'm really curious about Quotebeam. So we geek out about e-commerce and just when I hear like, man, this is a marketplace, supply chain. Sounds like you're just delivering some really powerful solutions. Can we get like, just for like, who's your product for? Who like really should be looking up and connecting with you? And like, man, this is a great solution for us. Who is that person out there? What's that look like?
So in terms of our buyers, who's buying product off of our platform? They are manufacturers, as well as machine builders and systems integrators that are doing automation in these factories. So we come from this industry, factory automation, industrial automation. And our pain point was that in our industry, these products are not easy to find, right? So you have regional distributors that represent a certain number of manufacturers, or you have manufacturers representatives, but it was all very analog and very offline, right? Your local distributor, you have a salesperson or 2 or 3 calling on you from these different, some of them direct, like when I was at Keynote, you get, there's like 5 Keynote reps for every manufacturer, and you probably get 20 phone calls a week if you're in their database. Or, you're dealing with a local distributor and you've maybe got a great relationship. Somebody shows up at your plant, once a week or whatever, but it's technical. It's oftentimes consultative in terms of if you have a new project, you don't just like run to the catalog and buy a thing, right? You have to figure out what combination of things is going to solve my problem. And it was very much, to me anyway, that the situation was whoever, was kind of lucky enough to get in your door, whether that's timing or you took their cold call or they got past your gatekeeper or you got recommended to someone, right? And then the brands you're buying oftentimes are, again, who does your local distributor represent? Or, there isn't a whole lot of visibility into the entire marketplace and what's available and getting like trade-offs and things, right? I think in our world, that's why people came up with the whole, like, I got to get 3 quotes, because it's just like, I don't know in what I'm operating in a vacuum otherwise, right? I have no idea what the market price should be for something like this. And they kind of did that on purpose, right? It was supposed to be very obscure and you have to get this amount of help to get it. And I really value the role of a good sales engineer, because usually in our industry, customers don't always know what they want or what they need. They know what problem they need to solve. And they really oftentimes need somebody that knows the technology to help them specify the right thing. But there's gradients of that, right? Sometimes how, like if you're designing a panel and you just need circuit breakers, for instance, like you don't need somebody's expertise necessarily if you know your chip curve and your voltages that you need and so on. You should just be able to go and, buy what you need. But it's not quite like that. And, growing up with like, the rise of Amazon and everything, I just became used to, shopping online and being able to find my own information. I'll make an example. I leased a car finally after I stopped driving, hundreds of thousands of miles a year in an outside sales job. My husband and I knew exactly which car we were getting before we walked into any dealership. We actually narrowed it down to like 3 brands and the class equivalent of a car between either, this manufacturer, that, or that. And we had a set of criteria that we wanted. And then we came in and we talked to the internet sales department, and then we negotiated a price. And, we came in, we didn't step foot into the dealership until we knew we were buying a car. And then we came in, we finalized the paperwork, and we walked, drove the car off the lot. But I don't come onto a lot and go, help me figure out what car I want or need. And I think that's a bit of a generational shift, maybe. Also, just different buyers have different preferences, right? I really like to do my own research and to know what I'm doing. And so I think with Quotebeam, very much the initial idea was, let's build a platform that makes it easier for us to do this consultative business. Let's say somebody already has a bill of materials. How do you, in the most efficient way, project manage, essentially? Because there's a lot of stakeholders involved in this process. You have the engineer that does the specifying. You have, the buyer that ends up cutting the PO. And sometimes, there's, depending on the size of the company, there may be different people involved. But all of this is kind of just happening via phone calls, emails. Oftentimes, the distributor has to go back to the manufacturer for expertise. They may not have expertise in all the product lines of all the things they sell. Like a standard distributor with like 30 to 100 manufacturers on their line card, and then every one of those manufacturers has thousands of parts. There's just no way a single person could know that catalog, whether it's from, the purchasing specs to even just understanding how it works, how to spec all of that, right? So it is a big kind of like project when you're talking about custom machine building. A little bit different than an MRO buyer that's just replacing a part in a machine, right? They just need a part number. So we wanted to build a system. That's where the Quotebeam name kind of came from. Like, how can I, in the most quick and efficient manner possible, beam my quotes over my quote requests or get them back and facilitate whatever interactions need to happen around that. So like one thing that I love about Amazon is no matter who I buy from, I can like go back in my account and see when I ordered it, where I ordered it from. It's all in one place. We even took that a little further. For every quote that we have, there's a chat associated with that quote that gets recorded. So you can always go back and chat with whoever is handling that quote, or, maybe it's a team, right? But every communication is tied to a project or something. So you don't just lose this in your email. There's a history of who accepted the quote, who quoted you, when did things change? Who made that change? Because it is a lot of going back and forth. But as we brought this online, right, it was post, kind of like after the first 2 years of the worst COVID, and they realized, hey, this is still a need, right? COVID does not mean that there's not market for this. In fact, it's probably even more needed now because the in-person sales calls aren't happening as much anymore. How do these engineers collaborate now if they can't just like show up to a conference room and hash this all out together in a meeting? People are working remotely again, more so. How do we project manage a lot of stakeholders around this together? Again, you can use Zoom and the standard phone calls, emails. It just kind of ends up, in our inbox with, I don't know how many I have. Oh, really? Right now I only have 146 unread emails. It's crazy. Normally it's like over 1,000, right? Stuff gets lost. I mean, if we talk about supply chain, right? Like these messages of like, hey, where's my PO? Or did you receive this PO? Like, please acknowledge this. When's the delivery date?
Right.
I can only imagine like a buyer's inbox. It's nuts. But then everybody that we talked to at that time, when we were trying to validate our product market fit, right? Hey, we're building this platform to help you communicate with your suppliers, aggregate all your quotes in one place so you can manage a whole project or a bill of materials and deal with your distributors, find new ones if you don't know where to get something. Everybody was like, well, yeah, that sounds great. And can I cut my sourcing time of a bill of materials from, 3 to 4 weeks to within a week? That's great. Like we all need that. It saves us time. But right now it's not my time. I can't get the parts to make something.
Yeah.
That's my main problem right now. yes, in the long run, I want to do it more quickly, but I can't do it. Whether I do it quickly or slowly right now, it doesn't really matter because if I can't get the parts, I can't build anything. And so we, being as, startup company, we want to solve a problem. We're not here to say, oh, we have the best product idea in the world and like, you need to do things our way. It's like, we know things are too hard. We want to make them easier. And everybody had this, I can't get parts problem. And what we found out is we're dealing with a lot of these mom and pop regional distributors. Apparently there's like 17,000 independent distributors of industrial products in North America. And a lot of them, started a couple decades ago. They're smaller, they're employee owned, they may be regional, they maybe have, 1 to 5 to 10 warehouses. They're not the most sophisticated when it comes to ERP systems. A lot of them don't do any kind of e-commerce.
Yep.
And if they do, props to them, because we talked about this problem before. If you're a regional distributor with 100 manufacturers on your line card, and these manufacturers have thousands of products each, how do you effectively build an e-commerce store for all these products? You don't own the data. Many of the manufacturers don't have good data, or if they do, they're not necessarily giving it to you as a distributor. How do you create and manage these listings when you're already short-staffed, and you can't take phone calls and emails fast enough for orders?
Right.
E-commerce is just not really a possibility for a lot of them, right? And then there's the question of, okay, there's everything in the catalog that I could potentially sell. And then there's what I have in my warehouse.
Yep.
Right? But if I only have an e-commerce store with what I have in my warehouse, it's not really going to complete anybody's project. Because who carries everything on the shelf that's needed for any kind of custom project? No one. So we thought to ourselves, and as we talked with everyone, hey, I know somebody over here that's dying to get these sensors, right? And then I know this regional distributor over here that doesn't have any e-commerce, and they have their inventory connected to anything that has these sensors in stock, but their local customers don't want them. They've been sitting on the shelf for 6 years. And this person over here is tearing their hair out because nobody's got these sensors in stock. You talk about the big catalog houses that you actually can find online, right? Yeah. But even distributor locators at this point are hard. They are not usually up to date. Between manufacturers, they vary wildly in how useful they are. Manufacturers' reps generally don't stock anything. And you go to distributors' websites and their line card is typically a PDF, and it's typically 2 to 3 years out of date. And they're like, oh, we actually dropped this line, and oh, we added this line. And it may be out to date, it may not. But we could not find an easy way to find, okay, who are all the distributors of this manufacturer's product? And if I could find them, it'll take me up to a week to call them all and ask them. And so we were like, well, if we're already bringing all these people to a platform where people can request quotes, right, from the distributors, can we aggregate this in-stock inventory to help our community, right? Help our distributors sell stuff that has been on their shelf forever and nobody locally wants. And you don't want their salespeople out there that should be solving problems to try to push stuff that's just on the shelf, right? They need to pick the right product, the right solution. And then on the flip side, you got these buyers that are just scouring the earth or trying to for something that the lead time is now 52 weeks or no quote. We have no idea when we can make it, or it's been pushed out 3 times. So you think you're getting it next week, and then you're getting it next month, and then you're getting it 3 months from now. None of us win if nobody can make anything, or if lines are down all over the place because we can't get our parts. So we kind of pivoted our business model. And this is one of the reasons why I said no to doing, for instance, a demo of Quotebeam today. Because we initially released our website and it was just like, you can request quote from different distributors and manufacturers and collaborate on your projects. And then we ended up kind of pivoting. Our first layer of value that we offer to people is, hey, we can help you find these parts in stock somewhere. Because now what we're doing is we're connecting to the ERP systems of these regional distributors, and we're helping by becoming almost like a reseller partner to bring their inventory and make it available to anybody that needs it, whether they're in their territory or not. And then we're helping them move that inventory. They're investing that money. They're investing that shelf space. They should be turning what they have on the shelf. What's not allocated for special projects or for particular customers. And on the flip side, there's somebody out there that wants to buy these things and they're just sitting. I call it dark inventory, because it's just it's sitting out there crying to be sold. And we need this in our industry. Like I said, the products are so specific. The criteria for selecting the product is so specific. the engineering, the sort of the terminology around it. There is no like generic B2B marketplace that really works for the types of products that we have in industrial automation. Sometimes I buy these things off of Zorro or eBay or whatever, but it is not the most efficient. It's very difficult for the sellers to manage the listings because they have to do so manually. And on the buyer side, you can't search by the attributes that we need for our industry specifically, except for part number and things. But what we do for the distributors is we help them we maintain all the product information. We have a huge database from hundreds of manufacturers, and it's growing, and we're investing that money and time into creating a listing page for each manufacturer's part number. Mm-hmm. That's another problem in our industry, right? Oh, I have a part number, but it's specific to my regional distributor, and I can't actually buy it anywhere else because that part number is made up, essentially. Is we have this single source, kind of hate this term, but whatever, single source of truth database of the products. Mm-hmm. And then the regional distributors, they can just pipe us their inventory. I have this many of this manufacturer's part number, and they're available for sale. And they don't have to manually create and maintain those listings. They just send us a file. It's something that is manageable for them. And it helps bring more of that to the surface to make it available to buyers. And then because we're in this whole business and building tools for bills of materials on the customer side, for online chat for distributors. So again, we tried a lot of chats. I like to do online chat. I'm like halfway. I like to talk to people. My sister, for instance, is 5 years younger than me. Picking up the phone is her last resort. Like she would never talk to a person if she doesn't have to. So I love chatting online, for instance, because also it's asynchronous. But most online chats, they're like, we made this for customer service. So if you haven't responded in a minute, we're going to assume you're taken care of and turn off the chat. And I'm like, oh, I have 100 other tabs open and I just left for a second and now I have to start all over again. That's really frustrating. Or I'll go to a website and chat. And I'm like, hey, do you have this in stock? And they're like, oh, email us. I'm like, what was this chat even for?
Yeah.
Or there's just not a competent person at the other end of that chat. It's somebody that's just like either a bot or a customer service agent that doesn't actually know anything. That's kind of a frustration of mine. I love chat, but when it actually results in something useful. Yeah. So we built our own chat that ties with the product information. It ties in with the quotes. So if you ask me for a quote in the chat, I can actually make you a quote, give it to you in the chat. You can click on it, and then you can check out with your credit card or with the PO or whatever. These are things that outside of our industry, they work pretty well, but then you look at the nuance of industrial automation and how that works. And you're like, wait, none of these tools actually work very well for us. So as much as I'm not a fan of reinventing the wheel, we've decided that there's a big enough need for our niche to do things in the way that works for us, that it is worth it to build it.
I have go ahead, Damon.
Go ahead, Nicole. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I had a follow-up question. I mean, I've been in situations with manufacturers where literally there's just a lack of education about what it is that they actually need. And to the point where they'll literally just send a picture to the sales rep and say, this is my part. I have no idea. Help me figure out. And so I guess my question for you is I do see that there is this education barrier a lot of times with these parts, especially if they're custom parts and they have to be custom manufactured. How do you address that? Because I love what you said, and you're absolutely right on. From the buyer's perspective, so much of this buying process is happening now online before people even are ready to talk to a sales rep, and that's only going to increase. It's 75%. So education just seems like such a big gap, especially in manufacturing, of how you address this, and how do you see that going forward, with Quotebeam, or what do you see to kind of address some of these challenges that manufacturers are having, where their sales reps are basically serving as teachers to help these people figure out what they need? How can Quotebeam or something else solve that?
So we really do have plans and hope to become a platform of content as well as procurement, cool. or being able to buy, right? Find what's in stock and buy it, or communicate with the right suppliers to order things for production. Right? You're not necessarily going to make a spot buy for, a 2-year production plan. Right. And then you made a good point about custom parts versus standard parts versus, custom machined parts. We realize we can't be everything to everyone. Right. So we are not a marketplace. We thought about it early on. Oh, we should have a section that sells machined parts. Right. So you can, but there's actually already a marketplace for that. So we really plan on partnering with companies that do what they do really well, right? So there's marketplaces for machined parts. Xometry is one of them. There's a few. There's also like software that connects to different companies, machine shops that use ERP called Paperless Parts, for instance. They help them do like quick quoting. I think there's several others, but we're not there yet just because we're resource constrained a little bit, but we really want to have a lot of education on our platform. So one of the plans we have, for instance, if you do have a part number, for instance, that you're looking at, then link to any third party that, reputable, right? Whether it's content from engineers that have YouTube channels about how they use that part, what that part is. We already link to like the manufacturer's data sheets, drawings. We'll have 3D CAD downloads for parts as well. We want that product page to be a hub of any information that you might need to know about the product, and do that same thing on kind of a category level, right? So are we talking about, oh, I'm looking at parts for my electrical panel. Well, here's some resources for building electrical panels, how-tos, depending on like kind of where you are in your stage of expertise, maybe as an engineer. Or maybe you're a procurement person and you don't understand quite what you're looking at in terms of drawings. We want to be able to have a community-sourced content as well, right? User-generated content is huge. We can't be the experts in everything. And we don't have the resources to write a very informative blog post about, 2, 3, 4 million products or parts, right?
Yeah.
So how can we as a platform become a source that can actually help you, whether it's understanding what a term means or understanding, what might be alternatives to this part number that I can't get? Or, is this a machined part that you're looking for? Well, in your bill of materials, so we have a plan for our bill of materials tool. Ours are all like standard parts or maybe configurable parts you're getting from manufacturers already. But that same machine is going to have some machined parts, right? Then we want you to be able to link right out to another marketplace where you can submit your drawings to get your RFQ for machined parts, and then pull it back into the bill of materials you're managing in Quotebeam. Because you can't say you're a one-stop shop if you don't actually have everything. Yeah. But you can't realistically have everything and be good at it. Like who? How would you?
Yeah, exactly.
So how can we as a technology platform provider become comprehensive? In our opinion, it's through partnerships, through intelligent partnerships where we can cut that customer, cut the steps down a little bit in that customer journey, help them not to run into roadblocks where they go, well, I don't know where to go for this next. It may not be us, but hopefully we can always point you in the right direction or the next step so that people can stop this whole like, oh, I'm constantly running into things where I don't know where to get them. One of the things that bugs me the most is when people come to us and they're desperately looking for parts. Like, let's say a machine is down and they're like, I need to buy this replacement part. But the OEM or somebody decided that to keep their customer in the dark, we removed the manufacturer's part number from this, so you can only buy it from us. Well, then if you're not responding to your customer's request that they need this part now, then what have you done? Like, that really bugs me. They're like, oh, I really need this part. And I'm like, I don't know where to get this because nobody actually sells this because this isn't a part. You're going to have to call blah, blah, blah machine builder that made this for you. And people are like, oh, but they're not, they're not responding and they're not quoting me. And I'm like, oh, that hurts my head and my heart for you. Like, this should not happen. So we're working on building all of our taxonomy to a standard. There's a nonprofit called eTIM. It started in the Netherlands with like marine parts for shipbuilding, but they quickly realized that like, hey, we need some sort of standard so that if you're buying this part from like supplier A, B, C, and D, there's got to be some way to know if it's the same one or not. And so we're going to be using that standard at some point so that, it should. I don't see how keeping customers in the dark helps anybody in the long run, right? You want to compete on things you actually, your quality as a supplier, not because they have no other choice or they don't know where else they can get something. In my opinion, that's like gone long ago. And anybody that's holding on to that as a way of doing business or why they should be staying in business, I don't think they should be.
Yeah.
But that's my personal opinion. This is.
Yeah. You guys, I tell you, you guys have a heck of a it's a heck of a daunting task, because I've got some clients where we work with different distributors, and that single source of truth you're talking about, and the content and everything, getting that together for yourself and having it is the key to being able to do it, because the distributors are horrible at it, and the manufacturers themselves are not that good at it. And I can only imagine on these automation type products how difficult that is, and how beneficial it is to your customers on the other side to be able to go, okay, I need this encoder, and I would call my local distributor in XYZ. They don't have it, but you guys can go, yes, but this one in across the country has 10 of them, and you can get it tomorrow, which is crazy cool for the people that are running into supply chain problems. But it comes back again to that centralized, there's a lot of value in that centralized single source of truth and inventory across the globe. Oh, wow. Very cool.
Man, this is like
so
the best
cool
hour of my life. And
this is the geeking out.
I was promising Nikki. I'm like, Nikki, we're going to keep it short. I promise. So,
well, then I'm the least concise person you will ever talk to, probably. So you could try to be short all you want, and then I'll talk for an hour and go off topic 10 times. But I do also want to add,
please.
Yes, because we don't have everything yet, right? It's a huge task to get this entire database together.
Oh, yeah.
You can also ask us to help you find anything, because what we don't have connected up yet, because when distributors pipe us their inventory, it has to match to a part in our database. And either if we don't have the part yet, we may be getting that feed, or we have visibility into that inventory, but it's not showing up on the website as, yes, you can buy it now, right? So anybody, if you ever see this, right, and you can't find a part on Quotebeam, that's what the chat is for. Tell us what you're looking for. We will add it to the database. We will see if we have it in the system. And if we don't, we will go find it for you, because we know hundreds of these distributors all across the country, a lot of them in North America, right? But also international. And it doesn't make sense for an individual purchaser to like make an import purchase. I mean, they will if they have to, but it's easier to just deal with somebody that you know, right? Send a PO to a known vendor, and we'll take care of it. So that's another thing that, like, as we're building the service, we do a lot of things that are not scalable in order to build that scale into the system.
Well, Nicole, do you have any other questions before we wrap up? Do you have any other? I know, like, we could talk to Nikki for another hour. Do you have any other burning questions you wanted to hit?
No, man, Nikki, I've learned so much from you. It's really amazing what you guys are building. I'm really excited about the potential of it. Definitely there's a massive gap in the market for this. And I'm just thinking about like the time savings for these buyers, the time they spend sourcing this stuff, like to be able to realize some of that time back so that they can spend it on, other parts of the business that they really need to be focusing on. I think it's really cool. I love what you're
one thing
building.
I've learned throughout all this like supply chain stuff is buyers that focus solely on pricing have had a really hard time also during this, because you can't have good relationships where people will go the extra mile for you if all you've ever done is hammer them on price, right?
Yeah.
So of course there's so much involved in how much you actually spend on a product. It's not just what you paid for that part. It's also how much time did you spend getting it, right? How did you have to deal with delivery issues, right? How do you have to manage that vendor constantly? Like, we have some distributors that I know they're going to give me the best price, but I also know that it can take them like a week to accept my PO and another week to ship out. And they're just not reliable, and they don't have great communication. So I choose not to buy from them, even though they have the best price, right? And a question that we often get with this sort of marketplace model, or, is, oh, you're just creating a race to the bottom. Well, no, because we're not, just showing like, oh, you can get low prices, or we're really not trying to encourage people to just like send 10 quote requests and buy from whoever has the cheapest price. No, it's about working with your quality vendors and your good relationships, but then having options when that option doesn't work, right? And then encouraging these quality relationships rather than saying, oh, just start doing business online and just buy the lowest price from wherever. We know in our industry also that doesn't mean much, right, in the long run. But I've also quoted like bills of materials where I right off the bat was like, hey, I really don't think I can get you a great price for all these parts. You're going to get a much better price from your local distributor. And the customer was like, well, if I factor in my engineering time that I would spend actually going to all these different distributors for this, because let's say it's a customer request and I don't even have local distributors for 2 of these manufacturers that are on this list. I don't know where to get them. By the time I spend my time sourcing this, I will have paid like 4 times the list price for these parts anyway. So you source them for me. And even if it's not the best price I could get for these parts, trust me, it's going to be the most cost-effective way for me to source this bill of material. Yeah. So there's really a lot that goes into that. I think sometimes when we talk e-commerce is lost because people just think, oh, e-commerce just means I can just go online and like shop based on price and then just get it delivered. Right. But there's a whole lot more to it than that.
Well, Nikki, I don't know if everybody knew, I don't, my Iceland language native tongue is not real strong, but I don't know if everybody knew this, but Quotebeam in Iceland stands for make your life easier. I don't know if everybody knew that or not. So I just share that. You've got the easy button for everybody, right? So
yeah. And you're catching us at a time, like early on in its journey when Airbnb was young, they went to all their host houses and took pictures of their listings because they were bad at it.
Right.
And we're in this stage right now where we do stuff like that, whether it's for customers or for distributors or for manufacturers that we work with. Yep. We're in the stage where we're willing to do a whole bunch of stuff that's not very scalable for the sake of building our community and building our tech so that when the tech is ready to take over, it can do things well. Because I have this whole background in automation and AI, and there's nothing worse than automating a bad process. Right. Yeah. So oftentimes you have to know exactly what you're doing before you ever try to automate it. Which is why you will never see a bot on Quotebeam's chat, for instance. Like, we will probably have some AI in there eventually when we know that it's 100% only doing something that a bot should do. Like helping you read a data sheet or answer a question from a PDF or something. Not something that a human person should do.
Yeah.
That was a quote of the day right there. Nothing worse than automating a bad process. That's brilliant. I love it. So, okay, Nikki Gonzales, let's do this. All right, first, let's unpack a couple things. And I know you are super busy. You're busy, mom. You've got a podcast. I don't know if you ever sleep. But okay, you know what? Hell's daughter didn't fall far from the apple tree, did she? So this was just a master class on e-commerce, marketplace. I just absolutely, we love what you're doing. This is a thrill.
Thank you.
I would be remiss if I didn't share. Damon, are you sitting down? Damon, are you?
Yes, I am.
It does look like you're. We stood up the whole week, man. Were we on our feet?
Yeah, we did.
My feet so hurt, dude. So let me share a couple things about Nikki. And I know Nikki, we need to let you go. Nikki, if these are some things that people say about Nikki, and I'm going back like years, okay? Ultimate professional, above and beyond expectations, exceptional entrepreneurial skills, and we just saw that firsthand today. Hardworking. Nikki is enthusiastic, tenacious, and able to quickly grasp and communicate complex technology. Nikki Gonzales, we want to thank you. We appreciate you. We applaud you for taking time. Dave Chrysler says, hey, that was my favorite quote too right there. And how about this, Mr. King of Process. But how about, you know what, if you guys were sitting down catching Nikki for the past hour, how about we all stand up and let's give Nikki a big roaring round of applause for just blowing everybody away.
Thank you guys. So
this was just phenomenal. I don't know if we covered half of what I wanted to cover, but this was just so good.
It was great.
Got to have.
I'm sorry.
No. This
good.
Was
good stuff. Good stuff.
Nothing, this is a compliment. This was perfect. Meaning we need to get you back over and over. So, Automation Ladies, you want to check out her podcast. She has incredible. If you really enjoyed this, just a fraction as much as we did, you have to check out her podcast. Go to Quotebeam. Check it out, even though they're kind of new. She said that, they've got new things on the horizon. Check out her website. Connect with Nikki on LinkedIn. Nicole Donnelly, any parting thoughts for Nikki today?
Ooh, any parting thoughts? Man, just from one mom entrepreneur to another, I love what you're doing. I think it's awesome, and keep on keeping on, man. The world needs it. Great job.
Thank you.
How about that? Damon, words of wisdom, parting thoughts for our crowd today.
No, I'm soaking it in today because Nikki, this is cool stuff you guys are doing at Quotebeam.
This was awesome. Now, Nikki, correct me if I'm wrong. I caught a little bit of your podcast. Field goal, is it if I say the word field goal, was somebody trying to kick a field goal on one of your podcasts? Was that you?
Yeah. It wasn't me. It was my guest on the podcast at that time. I was at MIA Manufacturing in America, which is a yearly event hosted by Electromatic and Siemens in Detroit. It's at Ford Field. Yep. And so I did a live interview with Amanda Beaton, who is director of the Siemens Cooperates for Education, or Cooperates with Education, which is one of the arms of Siemens that works with like colleges, students, things like that. And yeah, they have, if you ever go to MIA, it's free to attend every year. You can actually try to kick a field goal at Ford Field as part of the event, which I thought was really cool. Because at technical trade shows, you generally don't get, things like that happening.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I was not wearing shoes appropriate for that at all. I saw somebody totally eat it out there on the field, and I was like, I'm not going to embarrass myself this year. But I did make a commitment to try to wear some better shoes next year and give it a shot. So I'm going to be terrible at it, but I've learned that, that's not a bad thing. I enjoy myself at the bottom of a steep learning curve, and I've gotten over the fact that I'm bad at most things a long time ago, and I don't get embarrassed by that anymore. So I'm going to give it a try next year.
So Nikki, here's my last question. I promise, and we'll let you know. So who's your team? Are you a football fan that you're going to be kicking this field? Like, who's your team? Nope. Do you have a team, or Houston, Detroit, whatever? Okay, so if Nikki Gonzales gets called out onto the field to kick the winning field goal, you're down by 1 point. Okay, you're on like the 30-yard line, and like all the pressure is on Nick. They're like Nikki Gonzales is marching on the field to kick this winning field goal. What's your walk-up song? What song do you want the speakers? You walk up, kick, winning field goal. What is your? I love this
question.
Yeah.
What's your walk-up song? I'm expecting a really good one, Nikki Gonzales.
You're putting me on the spot, and this actually brings up a very traumatic incident of my past. I applied for business honors when I got to UT, the McCombs School of Business, and they did a group interview thing, and they asked me, what's my favorite song? And I didn't really know. My favorite band is Belle and Sebastian, and they have a song that I don't even remember the name of at the moment because I don't have a life anymore. And then they told me to sing it as part of the interview. Yeah.
You couldn't do it.
And I was like, hey, I wish you would have told me why I was picking a song, because I definitely picked a song that I can't sing.
What does that have to do with business? My goodness.
Yeah. And I was mortified because I cannot sing to save my life.
Now it could be it could be like Wheels on the Bus, or your daughter watches Frozen, or like could be like a Disney, So anyway, I'm just teasing you. So anyway,
Pressure from Encanto. Have you heard that one?
Oh yeah, that's a great song.
That's a good song.
That's I relate to that very well right now. I feel like oftentimes.
Good choice. You're off the hook. You passed. You got the job.
Thank you.
All right. Well, hey, Nikki, thank you. We appreciate you. We salute you. And this was awesome. And again, I pull this one up? So yeah, great job, Nikki. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Brandon.
Hey, thank you everybody that joined us today. And
yes.
if you're catching this on replay, boy, we encourage you, go back and just hit rewind and catch Nikki from the beginning. Again, catch Nikki's podcast, connect with her on LinkedIn. So Nicole Donnelly, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate you as always. Damon, we got to get back in person. Enough of this like virtual stuff. Yeah. We got to get back side by side doing our lives. So Nikki, thank you. Hang out with us for 1 second. We wish everybody an amazing, incredible week. Man, do we have a good guest this Friday.
It's going to be awesome.
Holy cowser, man.
It's from my area.
Sauce manufacturer. So
yeah.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap up. Get Nikki back on with her day. Have a great day. God bless you. And we will see you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, Nikki.
Bye.